Hi, everybody. So I'm going to screen share some Google Slides for you, but I'm also putting a link to the document in the chat in case that is helpful for folks down the road or if they ever want to reference it so that you'll have it in whichever format is best for you. So that's really the goal, is that if this ever is useful or if you want some of those citation references at the end, you can have that. So I am on 2 screens today. My hope is to screen share from one and then be able to have myself looking at you on the other, so that if you feel like making eye contact with the speaker is helpful for you, you can do that. And if you prefer to focus on the participants in your gallery view, that's great too. So thank you so much for being here on a Saturday morning. I deeply appreciate it, and I'm really hopeful that today will provide some help for all of you as early career educators. So today we're going to talk about the science of educator burnout, and I've done this presentation a few times when it wasn't during a pandemic and economic crisis, so it's even more relevant today, I think, than ever before. So like you all, I am an educator. I work at Tantasqua High School. I am in my 17th year teaching full-time, and in addition to being at the high school, I'm also a professor at Quinn Sigmund Community College for the early college program, and I'm a sexual assault crisis counseling supervisor at the University of Amherst. So I wear a lot of hats, and it's all around this mental health goal. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is to try to help all of us as we navigate the real stress of teaching. So here are our goals today. The first is I want to define burnout kind of in a concrete way, which is important, that we don't think that it's just a construct, but that we know that it is a real physical thing. And of course, we want to talk about how burnout can impact learners and how burnout can impact you as a human and additionally as an educator. The goals here might be to validate you, to let you know you're not alone, to let you know that what you're feeling is typical and normal and there's nothing wrong with you, and to find out what those symptoms of burnout are, to see what that might look like in your body, and to see kind of if you have a lot of those symptoms, if you might be on this track. Once we identify those symptoms and evaluate your risk, which will be done privately, of course, so that no one else will know your situation, we'll look at options that are evidence-based for preventing burnout if you're not there right now, and at remediating burnout if you find yourself slipping there. So those are kind of our overarching objectives for the day. So knowing that we only have about 45 minutes and this topic could go on forever if we really want to get into some neurobiology and things, I did want to launch our first poll, which is going to just ask what you'd like us to focus on today, and then I'll follow the lead of all of you. So if you could just take a moment and answer, oh, actually the other one, please. The other poll, please. Because that one's for a little bit later. Erin, are we able to get the poll?
Does anyone else see the poll? I see answers coming in.
Okay, I'm seeing a poll, but I'm seeing the wrong poll.
Today I'm most interested in focusing on.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry, I did start with the wrong one, but it's
okay. Maybe my screen didn't change. I'm so sorry for that. Great.
We are at 96% answered, so I'll go ahead and
perfect.
Polling and share results. Sarah, can you see the results right now?
I can't. Could you just share them with me?
Yes. Yep. So 76% said things educators can do to prevent and treat burnout.
Cool. So that'll definitely be our focus then. And if that wasn't your selection, I apologize about democracy. It can be really hard. And also you do have the full slides with all the notes and all the references, so that if you had a different preference today, you still can, of course, check those things out. And I can even give you my email if you want to reach out for some follow-up on those other areas if we don't get to them. So that's definitely a possibility if you're in one of those other groups. So we will definitely focus on educators, which I think makes a lot of sense. The things we can control in life are good. So educator burnout, as we look at it in the mental health care field, is really a physical experience as well as a psychological one. So it's not just like the thoughts you have in your head, but there are these chemicals that we see in the bloodstream that impact cardiac behavior and respiratory behavior, and even other systems like the immune system and even the reproductive system. So as burnout as an educator might sound really kind of vague, it's a real measurable thing that you could see in a blood panel. And it's a physiological experience, and this should help. Sometimes we all kind of get stuck in thinking like, maybe I'm just not tough enough, or maybe I could be more resilient. I was talking with my mom last night, who's been an educator for more than 40 years, and she was saying, maybe there's something bad. Maybe it's because I'm old that I'm tired. And I was like, Mom, you're teaching in a pandemic. That's why you're tired. You're not old. So this is really important that we know that it's not our abilities or our resilience that's the problem. It's these chemicals in our system. And they occur when we feel that our resources are threatened, that we don't have what we need to do our jobs, which I can say seems relevant in any public school sometimes, whether you just need to have better access to materials like computers or technology or even a photocopier, and of course nowadays with other things as well. And there's going to be more of this burnout if you spend a lot of time and energy on something that then doesn't work out. So like, for example, my district a couple weeks ago had a surprise remote learning day, and a lot of faculty hadn't prepared their lesson to be remote that day. And that is really frustrating when you make an amazing in-person lesson. Category, and we'll look at a little bit of these options. And these are when your emotional resources are used out. So when you're just out of energy. The next one is depersonalization. And depersonalization is this feeling like you're alone. And it's a feeling like you want to be isolated, that no one really experiences what you're going through. And it can lead to emotional distancing when we push other people away, or if they try to be there for us, we aren't good at accepting their support. So it might be like refusing to spend time with people or declining invites, but it also could just be going places but not really being able to be present in the moment. Then we have this perception of diminished personal achievement. So we feel like we're not doing well. We feel like we're not doing our best teaching. We feel like we're not doing our best parenting. We're not being the best partner to our people in our lives. And that can make you kind of think that maybe you're incompetent and you're not able to do this work when you actually probably can. So here's the body part, just to go through the science of what's happening, is when you have prolonged stress, you get these chemicals in your body that are supposed to be there for outrunning a bear. They're really great chemicals in evolution for like avoiding a predator and getting through a famine, some short-term problems. What they do is they're going to elevate your cardiac rates. They're going to elevate your respiration. They're going to turn off your immune system, because if you're going to be eaten by a bear, it's totally okay if you end up with a bacterial infection, because you're going to die from the bear first. And they kind of take everything away from you except this fight, flight, freeze. So here, what we're going to see is nervous system problems. We're going to be seeing problems with tension headaches, and we're going to also have endocrine and respiratory disease. And this happens because the hypothalamus in the brain releases this thing called corticotropin factor. And that's going to tell your pituitary gland that you're in a state of emergency. It's kind of like when you hear those beeping noises on TV or radio saying that they're having an emergency broadcast practice. That's what happens with this hypothalamus, is it's sending out this really strong signal saying, this is not okay, this is not normal. All of our resources in our body have to go to fight this problem, to fight this threat, which in education is usually something like, how do I educate dozens of students to the best of my ability when they all have different needs and I have limited resources? And when the hypothalamus does that, it then tells the pituitary gland to send out another hormone, adenocorticotropin, and that's going to tell the adrenal gland to give you cortisol and adrenaline. So adrenaline is the fight, flight, freeze hormone that tells you to tense your muscles, release glucose, put a lot of sugar into your bloodstream. And it also is going to tell you that you need this energy for fighting. cortisol is the one that tells you you're in famine and that you better save all your fat, save all of your calories for later. You better maintain body size because you're going to have not enough food, because our brains right now think the only trouble that there possibly could be would either be a physical attack or a famine. They haven't really evolved at this point. So that's why we have this experience. And here's what it does in the moment. And then we'll, of course, transition to how to try and take care of this. So the first thing is our pupils will dilate to improve vision so we can see what's happening around us better, so we can notice the student in the back of the room who's off task or the student in front of us who looks a little uncomfortable. And we can, scan the room for all the different problems that occur. Or nowadays, if you're teaching remotely, you can scan the Zoom gallery for students there. Here, your heart rate will go up. It will give you more nutrients and more oxygen. You're going to have sweat activated, and overheating during exercise is helpful, but when you're overheating during your job, it's not helpful. So that's the problem there. You get that heat in order to increase your ability to fight off the predator. And when you have extra glucose in your body, of course, that puts us at risk for other illnesses, and that's going to leave proteins, amino acids, and fat circulating around your body longer than you need to. So at this time, I'm going to be sharing in the chat the link for the symptom inventory. And this is just a document that hopefully will allow you to see how much burnout you might be experiencing. And of course, this is not a medical document. This is, something that is just a good starting point to see how stressed or overwhelmed you are. And when we look at that, we'll notice that it is a spreadsheet, and that to find out your score, all you're going to need to do is go through this list on the inventory and kind of put a little check mark or an X next to the things that you might be experiencing. So the first one is emotional exhaustion or craving isolation. And if you could all just go through this, think it over on your own, and then we're going to take a poll to see who falls in which categories. So take some time right now to go for that.
Hi, Sarah. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, but I can't see. I can see your spreadsheet, but I cannot read anything. It's just blank.
I appreciate that feedback very, very much. Is the link in the website working for you at all? Is the link in the chat?
We can now see your screen with the spreadsheet.
Thank you so much for your help.
I was able to open it.
Okay, great. Great. So I'll leave. Would it be helpful if I made this a little bigger for folks in case they didn't open it? And in case you're not able to access the link, I'll scroll down this after a little while. And as you finish, you'll just need a total score for yourself, giving yourself 1 point for the item. So for every symptom that you feel you might be experiencing lately, you just would give yourself a point. So hopefully as folks go through, they can get that total. And could you just put in the chat if you'd like more time before we move forward? Thank you so much, Venetia, for knowing you're ready to go. All right. So with that feedback, Erin, would you be able to launch that second poll?
Yes,
Great.
I just launched it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So this is anonymous, everyone, so no one will know what you answer. But if you're comfortable sharing, if you had between 0 and 8 symptoms, 9 to 17, or 18 or more, that might help us to see kind of where we all are at.
I just shared the results.
Oh, great. Erin, I'm not seeing those. Could you just let me know what they might be?
74% are in the middle of the 9 to 17 moderate risk of burnout.
Good. Awesome.
Okay, then 15% were low risk and 11% were high risk.
Awesome. So that seems like a lot of us are going through similar experiences, which is good. So that definitely, if we're in the 75% area, if we're in that moderate area, that makes a lot of sense. And it's good news, right? We still have time to focus on those remediations. So I am going to go directly to that. But before I do, are folks comfortable sharing which symptoms they noticed in themselves? Anyone comfortable sharing what they experienced to see if others have the same? Awesome. Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, an ability to hold attention. I've struggled even myself with even being able to watch TV. Rachel, overeating. Excellent. High blood pressure for Becky. That is so real. Emotional numbness, anxiety. Yeah. Wanting to be alone. Awesome. Nathan, it's interesting that there's more in that medical side than you'd thought of. That makes a lot of sense. And that definitely is because of those chemicals in the bloodstream that affect so many things. Yeah, the eye soreness, insomnia, feeling like not reaching those goals. So hopefully seeing each other go through this together could validate that your experiences are not about any shortcomings in yourself, but are about the challenges of the work we do. And absolutely, Alan, I'm seeing in special education that you're also struggling with feeling like you can't reach your goal. And that is such a challenging work at any time, especially as an early career educator. So I definitely do want to tell you that I think throughout our careers, we all will struggle with this. But I also can tell you honestly, for me at least, my early career was the worst. My first year of teaching, it wasn't a pandemic or an economic crisis. And I cried in my car on the way home every day because I just felt totally like a failure and there was so much to do and I could never sleep and there's like a second job. So you're not by yourself. And for most folks here, of course, there always will be years of exhaustion, but we can get through this. So I do want to share, as requested by your first poll, the things that we can do for ourselves as educators to prevent getting worsening impacts and, of course, to remediate things we might already be experiencing. So I am just going to pass up a good number of slides if you're following with the document from home that look into some other factors, because I definitely want to focus on your needs and what is most helpful and applicable for you today. So I'm going to once again screen share that for you. And if you are following from the document that you opened as your own Google slide, we are moving to number 16. So ways to prevent this from getting worse, or to do this in advance if you're in that mild symptom category, or if you're in the moderate symptom category, to try to make sure that things don't get harder and harder as far as these chemicals in our bloodstream causing these problems. So the first one is really hard. The first one is saying no to things, which is not something most educators do. Saying no to things like, do you want to be on another task force at your school? Or we need a new committee. You should come after school. You'd be great at this. And while you probably would be great at that, and probably they would benefit by having you on a certain committee or extra meeting after school, the first prevention for treatment is having these boundaries for ourselves and for others. And that is so challenging to do, because if you were the type of person who was good at saying no for help, you wouldn't be an educator. Outside of work, these no's have to happen too, though. Yeah, Catherine, I feel you on struggling with this. I think it's really hard because it feels so nice to be invited to things, and it feels like you totally would do it better than people there sometimes. But this no is big, and even to family and friends. So even if you would love to see your friends and you haven't seen them in a while, but you also haven't slept this week, finding an ability to say, I care about you, I want to see you, but I really need to go to bed today is important. This can be hard for our children. This can be so hard to say no to our children or to our parents if they're elderly and in care. I know my mom and I lately have been the only persons we're seeing our immediate family, so there's a lot of pressure that people need you. Coworkers asking like, hey, I know you're really good at technology. Do you want to help me with this? And so we all need to start by celebrating the no. And when I was early in my mental health training, one of the first things I learned was that if you don't have a no, you never really have a yes. Because if you don't feel like you have a choice, you're never really consenting to any of these things. It's just things piling on top of your body, piling on top of your mindset. So the saying no alone gives you this sense of control and allows you to stay focused. So it is super hard for most people to do, but you should almost celebrate any opportunity you have to empower yourself to say, I'm really hoping you can understand where I'm coming from, but I need to not do this today. And sometimes we have to tell our loved ones, tell our spouses, or tell our families or friends, like, I really do care about this issue. I really want to be there, but I need to put my health first. So that's the first way to prevent things from getting worse. Bedtime. It is not just for kids these days. Bedtime is super key. So most adults have some variation in their sleep needs based on their age, but on average, most adult bodies need 6 to 8 hours of sleep. And during sleep, our bodies heal. They heal the bloodstream, gets rid of the stress chemicals because there should be less stress when you're unconscious, which is good. It clears those things out of the system and kind of allows the body to restart. So you will notice without sleep, your blood pressure goes up throughout the entire day, your resting heart rate goes up throughout the entire day, and you'll have weight gain without enough sleep, just from the lack of time that you're spending fully allowing that recovery. And this is also really hard because sometimes it feels like by the time you finally get a moment to yourself during the day, it's like 11 o'clock at night and you're getting up at 5 to go to school. But this one is biologically huge. And of course, you don't need anyone else to do this for you, but sometimes you can just do it as a reminder. So for me, what I've had to do with this one is I set an alarm on my phone. And if at 10:30 my alarm goes off and I'm doing something valuable and purposeful, I stay awake and ignore it. But if my alarm goes off at 10:30 and I'm doing something that's not valuable or purposeful, that I'm like, I'm just kind of wasting time and not sleeping, I should probably go to bed. So giving yourself some type of sleep plan, even though you're adult, can definitely help. And this is not something that's celebrated in mainstream American culture as much as in other cultures. So that's really, really important to take that on as part of your self-care. If things are more serious than not getting enough sleep, if you're looking at sleep-related disorders like ongoing like insomnia or even narcolepsy, there are some at-home tools you can try first. You can listen to some calming music, do some online guided meditations. The Calm app has a lot of free options for educators, and progressive muscle relaxations are available online where you tense your muscles and make them feel like you did a workout when you didn't. And that helps the body to feel like you fought that invader, that you tackled that challenge. And of course, this is the one that many of us have a hard time with, especially nowadays. But if you can minimize your screen time for 2 hours before bed, which is like honestly almost comical to most of us to minimize screen time these days, or especially if your calming activity in the evenings is watching something on TV. But if you could do it for 2 hours before bed, it allows the neurons in the part of your brain that process sight to slowly unwind. It allows them to calm down, allows for deeper sleep. And that's something we don't always notice, the depth of our sleep, but the flashing screens, absolutely, that backlight is going to impact your sleep quality for at least 2 hours if you try to fall asleep. So if there's even a way you could cut back for a half hour before bed, any cutting into that screen time right before bed is going to allow those neurons to begin to unwind from all the refresh rates that we're seeing on computers and cell phones and things of that nature. And of course, if your sleep problems are really bad, you want to consult a medical professional, but getting sleep matters. And if you have to go to sleep and leave tests ungraded for another day, it is highly unlikely that when your students are 10 years older, they're going to remember if they got their quiz back on Monday or on Tuesday. It is absolutely a good time to remind ourselves at bedtime, about long-term expectancy, or this idea that, will this matter in a year? And if it won't matter to you or other folks in a year, maybe it's okay to put other priorities first. Regular exercise, which is hard these days, as a lot of us are being mindful of being careful in shared spaces. But if you exercise, you're going to sleep better. And so if you're having trouble sleep, this might be a place to go. What it does is it literally uses the adrenaline and cortisol for sleep. It uses those stress chemicals up. So they're not circulating to your pancreas and causing insulin problems. They're not circulating to your heart and causing cardiac problems, or to your reproductive areas and causing infertility or things of that nature. So this exercise is great. And it could be anything. It can be going for a walk. It can be vacuuming sometimes gets to be quite challenging, or it could be a harder workout. So in addition to using up those chemicals, it's going to give you endorphins, and the body typically only releases endorphins for physical pain, even though the brain processes all pain, including emotional pain, in the same area, the parietal lobe. So while we feel emotional pain in the same part of our head, in the same part of our brain, and the experience is just as real, we have no chemicals released for that. So if you exercise and you can get endorphins to cover the pain of your muscle soreness, those endorphins will also cover up the pain of your emotional stress and turmoil. And this is why, even though things aren't actually better in your work life after a workout, you might feel better after your workout, because those chemicals are giving you this pain covering effect, which happens for any emotional pain. You are without it unless you do something on purpose that causes some physical burden. Aerobic activity, specifically getting the heart rate up to about 80% for 20 or more minutes at least, is going to release this chemical that Dr. Reedy out of Harvard calls miracle grow for the brain, and that's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and it grows new brain cells. And growing new brain cells makes everything easy because you've got more brain cells to do it with. And it helps with the stressed brain cells to share their work. And those brain cells will be focused or specialized for whatever you do after the exercise. So in my classroom, during non-COVID times, we have desks in the back of the room with bicycles, and the kids cycle during class to get this BDNF going. And then once they have these chemicals in their brain, they learn psychology, and now they've determined that these new neurons are going to be psychology-focused neurons. So if you exercise and do your lesson planning, it's going to get easier for you. If you exercise in the mornings and then you go to your classroom, you're going to get better at your presentation and management skills, just because you're getting these brain cells that will specialize exactly for whatever you do right after the exercise. They specialize on the thing you're using them for. after that. In addition, of course, if we all know that stress causes weight gain, no matter how few calories you eat, if you're stressed, you're going to get a roll right around the belly, and exercise can help with that to decrease those other risk factors like autoimmune conditions and cardiovascular illness. And we do notice that teachers who exercise have fewer sick days. And I also am all for you using your sick days if you're sick. That's super important to rest and recover. But of course, having fewer sick days might be a sign that you're just not that sick. And that's the thing we're actually celebrating here, is that you're not sick, not that you're not taking the days. So the goal here is that exercise can be that prevention for the sickness that can come, because when you're in burnout, your immune system turns off. And there can't be anything more alarming than thinking of right now during this pandemic, having your immune system turned off because you're overwhelmed at work, right? Like that's the last thing we need, is to have less of an immune response. So these are the real goals, is to keep you healthy for you. And if that takes sick days, it does. The next one, meditation and prayer. And it doesn't matter which. So if you're a person who has spirituality in your life, that's great. Go for prayer. If you're not, meditation works, and of course is available to all folks. And there is significant data, replication study after replication study, saying that these two things make you live longer. So with meditation, we know that it's because of the parts of your brain that are acting. And with prayer, we know that it's either that your higher power is helping you out, or that it's the part of the brain that's activated, and maybe some of both. So here's what meditation and prayer do. They don't just make you feel good and feel like some warm, fuzzy thing. My students will tell you I lacked any softness. I say things like, you better meditate because we need some chemicals here. So it's really important to see that this will decrease your muscle pain. So if you're sore from sitting in that chair because you're Zoom teaching this year and you've been sitting in that chair for 6 hours, you can meditate away some of that soreness. It's going to help with depression. A lot of folks nowadays have heard about the increased risk for suicidality, the increased risk for serious depressive illness. And this does help. And there are meditations available for free online and through apps. And I'll put my email later so you can reach out if you need some resources on that. With anxiety and even with headache. So these are really great free tools with no real side effects that you could imagine. I mean, maybe you lose 10 minutes to do them, but that's about it. And how they work, in case you're looking for some hard evidence to really believe in this and buy in, is that there's part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex and the basal ganglia. And these are the parts of the brain that deal with worry and anxiety. And worry and anxiety are life-saving things. These are wonderful emotions, because if we weren't worried or anxious, we would all run into oncoming traffic. We wouldn't plan ahead for our meals, right? This would be really bad. We'd have no way to stay alive. But this anterior cingulate cortex and basal ganglia need to calm us, because everything can't feel like a panic, and because we need to get those bloodstreams back to normal. So when you do meditation or prayer, whichever feels better for you, your goal is just to focus your thought on one thing. And when you do that focusing of your thought on that meditation or prayer, you're using your prefrontal lobe, this one right here that we hear a lot about with, if you're looking at people thinking about executive function, they talk a lot about the frontal lobe. And the prefrontal lobe is the beginning of this. And that's the last part of the brain to develop. It ends development around age 25. It is what is proof that some animal, the human species, elephants, dolphins, have higher order thinking. And this prefrontal lobe does attention and tells you your life story. So if you spend time meditating and praying around calm, this prefrontal lobe is going to make you focus on calm and tell you that your life story involves calm. And if you choose to pray, it will tell you that your life story involves someone caring for you, this higher power. So those two things are huge, because this prefrontal lobe, right in the very beginning of your brain, is what determines your strategies for the future, your strategy in your lesson plans, your strategy for student management, your strategy for how you're going to be an amazing teacher, a great partner, and a perfect parent at the same time. It's going to help you with organization in that frontal lobe. It's going to help you with critical thinking when things go wrong. And that area is exactly what we all need in our career. So this meditation and prayer can make you live longer, can give your body and your brain the chemicals you need to take a deep breath and to not overwhelm yourself, and can make you better at planning and acting in the moment when things go astray. Eating healthfully, this is where I fail. I am a strong believer that everyone needs ice cream in bed every night, and that is not what the data says is healthy. So you also might struggle with this as well. So the first one is we want to minimize chemicals that stress the brain. So preservatives, especially ones that are not natural preservatives, they are made to change how cells function, right? That they preserve things by having the cells not decompose. So in your body, preservatives can impact how your brain cells function. And if you're slowing them down to slow kind of this decaying process, it might not be for the best. So of course, moderation is key in life, but you might consider limiting preservatives as they impact cell behavior. Sugar substitutes are worse for the brain behavior sometimes than actual sugar. Sugar substitutes can cause some inflammation in the brain. Sugar substitutes can slow brain behavior. So be mindful of those. And of course, nicotine is going to be a drug that's going to impact how your brain acts as well. And that one's going to be a stimulant, causing brain cells to fire faster, but not necessarily better. Ephedra is another one there. So those chemicals are going to decrease your brain resilience. And that's, moderation is key. So maybe that just means you make 1 or 2 changes here and there. You don't want to cause stress in your life by overwhelming your entire life and changing it completely. The bottom one, vitamin B. Vitamin B is an amazing vitamin and that there's so many places to get it. So you can add any vitamin B foods to your diet or just make sure you keep them there if they're already there. And that's going to help your emotional stability. That means that you can be overwhelmed, but still have your act together that day. And I don't know about you, but some days I'm on my way home from school and I'm thinking like, hey, you did not snap at that child who did something absolutely absurd today. Well done. Well done not losing your cool. Or some days when you're able to, get through having personal life not interfere with your classroom, that's a big deal. So this emotional stability just means that you feel things, but you're able to still get through that checklist. Cognitive function. These foods with vitamin B help your brain do the best it can in that moment. So it helps those brain cells fire. And it also is an immune response method. So vitamin B helps your immune system. Super important always. And you'll see at the front up here at the picture, you've got options. So it's in fish, it's in lots of vegetables like greens and peas and also asparagus. It's in lean meats like poultry. It's in crustaceans. It's in beans for those of us who don't eat meat. It's in black beans and it's in all types of legumes. It's also in bread for folks who enjoy a good, nice roll or a sandwich. So it's in so many different things. It's even in dairy. So if you are just eating any kind of poultry, fish, greens, or kind of natural and healthy proteins like in beans or crustaceans, you're going to be all set. But those things will give you emotional stability, higher cognitive function, and a better immune response. And the next one is probably one that I think teachers are better at than most other fields. And I might be biased. That's not true. I'm definitely biased. But here you'll notice that laughter is going to keep you from burnout. And we can do that on purpose sometimes by encouraging laughter or doing fun games with our instruction. But I feel like for me, often, my laughter in the classroom is often a gift from my students. They often say things that I never expected, or sometimes bordering on, I'm not sure if you should have said that in school, but we can still find joy in them. And this laughter is great, including laughter at yourself. And even when the kids are kind of boundering on that boundary line of like, are you funny, but I'm not supposed to tell you? Sometimes I just tell them that. I'm like, this is hilarious. I'm not sure that you're appropriate and I'm kind of worried. But I do acknowledge it because this laughter is scientifically proven. It's not just that it feels good. So when you laugh, your blood pressure drops within minutes. So that's great, right? We know all the impacts of blood pressure. And the more you laugh, the more consistent that drop will be. So whatever you can do to find comedy, like stream some stand up, maybe you watch late night, whatever you've got that can make you laugh. When you laugh, you get the ability to have endorphins ease pain. So instead of having to do a big workout to get that, then you could be doing some laughter. Jess, I see you in there, and I definitely agree that laughter is hard to find in the remote world. That might be something, to work on with small groups or to even invite the kids kind of to share a little about their day, but that is one of the challenges we all face together. When you laugh, you get platelets. That way, if you hurt yourself, you don't bleed to death. So this is great. So if you trip in class, I know there's a particular trash barrel I tend to walk into, and you laugh, you probably won't bleed out. So that's a big win. No one wants that to happen. And it does release gamma interferon, and that's going to kill a lot of different illnesses. So the more you laugh, the better that immunity will be because of this particular chemical. So it helps if you tell the joke, and it helps the people hearing the joke. So definitely feel free to do this, to try hard to find that joy. So we are coming toward the end of our time together. So I'm going to give you one more slide, and then I want to give you just a quick overview of other resources you might use as you move forward, because this is definitely a topic we could do, or if you have specific needs, I'd like to help you one-on-one with. So the remediation part, for those of us who are already in moderate burnout or further, or if you find yourself kind of going towards those worsening situations, if you notice your symptoms tick up as the year goes on. Being proactive. So once you're already burnt out, saying like, I know I'm having this and I need to limit my time. I need to limit my investment. So that can be a mental health time off, whether that's a few hours or a day. That could be any type of limit. And sometimes we need to write those down. And a really good strategy for that is to tell someone who cares about you that you're doing it. So I've had to tell my partner before, like, I'm stopping grading at 10 p.m. And he looks at me and is like, I don't care. And I'm like, I'm telling you so that I'll actually stop and you can help hold me accountable. So we can invest others in these goals. Listen to your body, being aware of it. If your body is saying, I've been sitting in this chair too long, then believe it. If your body's saying, I need to go to sleep, believe it. If your body's saying, I'm feeling depressed, believe it. Don't doubt yourself. Graded work can be returned late. I have never met a person in my life who says the most defining moment of my public school education was that one time a teacher had great turnaround on grading. Like, that has not been the memory that they take. They take your in-person connections. So if things don't happen, they don't. If you're doing an extracurricular, you can postpone a practice or a club practice, or you can postpone a meeting and say, listen, guys, we usually meet every single day, but this week's surprise for you, it's Wednesday, no cross-country practice. You're welcome. You can do these things like leave your floor unvacuumed, scandalous as it is. It would be okay to cut back. And of course, you might need to take some time off from extra time activities. Many of us do things like coach or do committees or volunteer work, so taking time off. Finally, actually put in your schedule the time for your family and friends. So when you make your calendar, whether you do that online with an app like a Google Calendar or you do it on paper, actually schedule in, like, I'm seeing my friends on Friday at 5. I can't do anything else, I'm busy. Or actually say, like, family time is Sunday. I'm not responding to a student email because my calendar is full. I have family time from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. on Sunday. So to actually schedule for yourself is really, really important. So with that being said, I know this was like the world's quickest version of what is this hugely scientific process, and that some of these things are things you've probably heard before, but I am hopeful that there is something of value today. So I'm going to put into the chat my email, which you can always reach out at any time, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. With anything you're curious about, interested in, other resources or parts of the topic we didn't get to today, so that you can have whatever other resources you need. So you can keep that for down the road if you want. And I hope that the rest of your day today at the conference is useful and empowering, and that you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all for being here.